Greetings and welcome to Open Circle Live. My name is Jamie Rich. I am your guide on the side, the guest host on this gathering that we do every Wednesday here in our wonderful online studio. We have an invitation for you, standing invitation for you to come in at any time and join us at opencirclelive.com. So today we're focusing on something that has to do with creativity. Now, I know creativity is a loaded topic for people. There are some people who don't think of themselves as creative. This past week, I ran into somebody who she had just recently retired and she was looking for activities that she was going to be involving herself in. And like many people, she was like, well, I have an interest in doing this and I have an interest in doing that, but I'm only really good at this. And I was like, but what does your heart say that you'd like to do? What I'm not very creative. I've never been very creative. I mean, I've always thought about maybe doing some oil painting and maybe thinking about doing that. But I, I want to do the things that I'm more comfortable with. And I kind of chuckled a little bit because I can see myself in what she is saying so often, which is we kind of think as creativity is this thing that's in a box that some people, like either I'm creative or I'm not creative, or I can't really be creative because I'm not as good as other people. Well, in today's gathering on Open Circle Live, I want to see if we can kind of take the restrictions off of creativity and open ourselves up to a little bit of more of what's possible, right? And two of my favorite people happen to be in this room today. With me in the featured co-host seats is Dr. Patricia Searing. Greetings, Dr. Searing.
Greetings. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
And also tucked in between us today is my good friend Ray Guillot. Good morning, Ray.
Hello, and happy to be here.
Thank you for being here. And again, you're welcome to join us in the studio as we're talking about the subject of creativity. But Patricia, in your work with people, have you found that creativity is one of those bugaboo words where sometimes people, well, I don't really think of myself as creative, or well, I'm just making that idea up. It's as if on one hand it's a superpower that we have no ability to tap into, and then it's somehow this child that we have to kind of make sure stays away and doesn't interfere with us. Does that dance sound familiar to you?
It does. I do run into that with the people that I work with frequently, actually. But I am quick to explain that I see it as how they adapt and express, so that it's how they solve problems, how they could reimagine their lives. That's huge. And move forward in new ways also because the people that I work with are stuck.
Right.
So I call that creativity. So I don't even have to have that conversation about how they can't draw. I don't care.
Well, you just said something funny that we sometimes don't think of ourselves as being creative until we get into a situation where we're stuck. And then it's as if, it's like, I'm sure you've watched in a snowstorm, people trying to get out of the snow drift the same way. And it's just like, well, maybe you need to think about this a little bit more creatively. There's a different way than you can do it. But, people will just stay in their rut because, well, I'm not creative. I'm not doing anything. And, it's in the stuckness that most of the freedom for creativity comes out. Has that been true for you, Ray?
Yeah, I just love the idea and the what you just brought forward, Patricia, was the fact that the minute you start to sort of talk a bit more and you expand the idea beyond what they're thinking in as far as creativity, and you said reimagine. I really connect with the idea of imagining something different and something new, like you said. And what I've discovered is in a conversation, somebody will bring something up, and I'll go, "Wow, that's really creative." And they go, "What do you mean?"
Oh,
So they don't realize that coming up with an idea or a different perspective is actually an act of creativity and imagination.
Yeah, that dance with our imaginations, Patricia, is just so interesting, isn't it? Because on one hand, I mean, as you can imagine, I'm one of those highly imaginative people, right? And there's a lot of thoughts that throw through my head. And somebody would say, well, that's just your imagination. That's just well, you're just being creative. And for years, I thought about this as some kind of abusive part, like, oh, well, I just made that up. That really can't be true. That we marginalize our creativity because we don't understand it, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I love about you. You can stretch like that. You can say, "Oh, well, okay, well, let's see. I can imagine that." I mean, I've heard you say that many times. And even in engineering, bringing this live, oh my goodness. Yeah, all the avenues that you approached and you knew what you wanted to accomplish and you just knew you could do it. I mean, it was something that, and you didn't have experience the way that you're using all of this now. No, I mean, that's great. I love that about you. I
So,
have, I have one other piece
yeah,
I wanted to say
yeah.
about this too. One of the things, and it contributes also to what you have said, Ray. One of the things that I encourage people to do, and myself, is to see the outcome that I desire. Yeah, see it. Just see the outcome I desire. And because I'm very senior and never was trained in this, even though my entire practice has included that concept, I still have to remind myself. I'm not criticizing myself. I'm saying I still have to remind myself to do that instead of stewing, losing sleep, feeling anxious about something that's showing up, etc. It's just so simple to do it now, see the outcome that I desire. And so that to me, what could be more creative, right?
Well, what you're talking about is actually putting your creativity into like a channel. Like it gives the creative flow um I think of the term a French drain. You know how like when there's a lot of water that's coming down, you don't really build a pipe, but you put this thing in your yard that allows the water to flow, right? That best accommodates that flow. And when you say, I want to, imagine that best outcome, what you're doing is you're giving that direction to the creativity. You're allowing all those random thoughts, right, to flow in a direction that is um I want to say observable. Is that right? That allows that flow to happen. Is that what happens to you when you say to yourself, I'm going to imagine that outcome, that all of a sudden other ideas start coming up in alignment with it?
Actually, I see myself present in that situation and I imagine the outcome that I want to experience. I mean, I directly create that outcome. So I'll use an example. I just started teaching social dance part time, and I've danced my entire life. So I'm actually qualified to do that. And I was stuck in my mind with something that my students are stuck on, and that's a hand hold. And it really works like this. You can see my hand. When the leader flips the hand like that, the follow automatically connects this way. So you're coming from this kind of a thing with the hand to this, and then the turn can be done. I mean, that, talk about creative, but I was stuck on that because they're not getting it. And I know some of them are, it's really going to hang them up. And so right away, well, pretty quick, I imagined the whole thing. I go in tomorrow and teach it. I imagined the whole thing in my mind. I saw myself, I saw my students, I saw everyone doing it. I saw me laughing with, I had this glee going on because they all got it and they thought it was a miracle that all you had to do was flip your hand and the follow knows what to do. Yeah. I mean, yeah, what could be better? So that's an example of what I'm talking about. I actually do create myself in a scene with the outcome I'm looking for.
Well, and I love what you said because creativity needs small victories and small celebrations, right? Because I know one of the things that I see some of these people who are like one of the things that I struggle with, is I'm not a good visual artist. Painting is just, I mean, I'm more interested to see where the brush goes and, all those other things. And, that's my own creativity, but I have to fight sometimes because I see all these people, who can make pretty pictures quickly. Right. And then I get frustrated. Well, I can't do that. And then, or I see all these people who are so creative, they can spend a long time, just, crafting a piece of music or, writing a book but I love what you said about that handhold. It was a simple thing that people could get so that they could have that aha, like they could get the aha and then they could continue on their little creative journey.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. People, at first, I think people think that it sounds like some kind of woo woo instead of that it's actually a scientific principle. It is now. And and so because I have that concern, I'm very quick to say this is not woo woo. It's not something that's not founded that actually it actually will work. All you have to do is simply practice it. I mean, it's so revolutionary to so many people that it still surprises me.
Well,
I mean, yeah,
is it because that fancy word is neuroplasticity and, people hate terms? Is that, you know,
exactly.
it's like all of a sudden we were talking about creativity and now I hear a word like neuroplasticity, but it's sometimes better to just simply say, just like you did with the dance move, people get it without you telling them what the concept of getting it is all about, right?
Exactly. And also the word psychoneuroimmunology. I mean, who in the world? Why would I mean, so I have banned myself from saying any of those words, psychoneuroimmunology. I love it, but and you actually put it all together. It's not three words. They've got it all together now
Wow.
as one word. That's great, isn't it?
It is. It's amazing how we complicate things, isn't it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was just going to add that your example of the dance was fantastic because I was reading a while back that all the big inventions in the world, all the big developments, started very simple steps and wonderings. What would it look like, or what would it be if I did that? And it goes back to the big things like the light bulb and all the other things where they said, well, what happens when you connect this to that? And it's become a scientific process to actually explore other areas. You go into an area that you're not familiar with and you say, well, how do they handle something? What do they do with it? And then you say, how does that apply to me? And the dance was perfect because you started simply, then you imagined the idea grew bigger and became real because you basically then was able to share it with others who were participating. So it's as simple as a small start.
Well, and Ray, as you're talking, sorry.
No, go ahead, Patricia, please.
Well, so Ray, as you're talking about that, I love what you're saying, and I also see a picture like a map, a mind mapping. And I know from your background, you know what that is. So do you, Jamie. But the mind mapping, I akin that to a Windows program. I mean, everybody's using it now. Mac is too, but you click on something, it expands. Yeah. But the mind map is the beginning and it's got the concepts and they're all connected to each other. And that's what I think about with what you said. I love that it's a wonderful way to open up with something that's pretty complicated. Could be, pretty complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it begins with amusing. And I don't mean amusing, but begins with a musing. The idea that it is something where you're entertaining that idea, and it begins, as a thought, as something to entertain, right? And as you click on it in your mind, as you begin to sort of see that there's this, well, maybe, and this is what I was trying to suggest to this friend of mine who said that she couldn't be creative. Well, is there a chance that you could just simply, take a shower with it and see what that how that feels? How does that idea feel like when you're washing your hair? Give it a chance to. I'll use your dance metaphor, but allow it to kind of dwell a little bit, because that's that permission slip of being able to say, well, all right, our creative capacity is dimmed a lot in our culture these days, because people are just saying, well, don't think about it, just do it, you know don't
Ooh,
and a lot of people have been told, oh, those are just stupid ideas, and those are, put that away, we were just really need you to do this. And so I guess, that musing begins with just even being willing to open up the Crayola box, being willing to click on something, being able to sort of begin with that simple musing about what's possible, right?
right. And you said something that's key to this process as well. You use the word feeling. See how you feel about it, feeling. There's research on this, that strong research that says that the better you feel about the images that you're creating, the outcome that you desire, right? The better that you actually feel about that, the more likely it will come to fruition. The shorter the time span will be in that actually taking place. So I tell everybody, if you doing this when you first practice, if you come up with something that you dislike or it doesn't turn you on, get over it. Just dump it, get rid of it. You don't have to think about it anymore. Come up with an idea, the outcome that you desire, that actually makes you feel good, causes you to feel inspired or creative or smart, right? Enthusiastic, optimism, etc. Then that actually is the organizing piece. Who knew, right? Who
Right.
knew? Yeah.
Well,
I mean, that's the organizing piece.
how do you feel about checking it out with your body? I know there's a lot of people who use this idea of light and heavy. Like, if I think about something and it's really, there's a light and there's an ease, but if I get really heavy, oh man, I'm worried about, is that concept helpful in the creative process? The concept of light and heavy in your body, like when you're,
Well, I think it is. I mean, just right away, it sounds good to be light, right? So I think it is. I hadn't heard that one before. Honestly, I think that's a great idea. And what I think is a great idea about what you just
please.
brought up is actually more global. It is check in with your body, because that's where the emotions are.
Okay.
That's where the feelings are. And if your body feels heavy, pitch it. If you want to look into it, go ahead, right? But if you can actually come up with something that creates a light feeling, then it's worthy of actually then continuing the creation.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
if you're watching the beacon that we're putting out about Open Circle Live, I want to give you an idea to muse on, and that is that you can join us real easily in the studio, as you can be part of the conversation. We have chat that's available for you as well. Just hop on in at Open Circle Live. And if you're watching this on a replay at any time, just know that you can join us Wednesdays at noon Central Time. And so I'm planting the seeds of that permission slip to be out there. So um, eh, tell me a little bit more, Ray, about especially people who have, because I know that you work with a lot of people around the world, and sort of this is a universal muscle that isn't being applied, right? It isn't just a North America situation, right?
Oh no, it's and I'm so glad you brought up the how do you feel in your body, and the elements that you just added to that is that it manifests itself in so many different situations. I'll just give a small example. I was watching, of all things, something on Netflix, and this was a couple years ago, and it was Marie Kondo who was talking about how to declutter your space in your life, and she said something very interesting. She said, "Look at the objects. You have a connection with the objects, what you have, your clothing, your books, etc." And this is what you'll like, I think, Patricia. She said, "What do you feel? Can you let go of this object? You know you have to get rid of your 17 pairs of shoes, but," she said, what emotion is evoked by this pair?" And the person said, "Oh, I feel sad because I wore that at a funeral." And then it was, "Are you ready to let it go?" And she said, "Oh yeah." So then all of a sudden it was the understanding and the emotions in play, because she felt good, that she knew that she needed to declutter her closet and her house and stuff. And back to the global aspect, in a lot of conversations that I'm having with groups, is we actually pause and say, how are we feeling about what we've accomplished, and what feeling in your body do you have? Uh, because there's an exchange of ideas, and some of them are not pleasant. There's a bit of a tension. So somebody would say, "Well, I was really tense when you brought up this idea, but because I heard this other person say something, that lightened or made me feel more calm to the idea." So it's you're right, Patricia and Jamie. It's everywhere, and it's all connected to who we are as human beings.
The creativity connection, right? The thing that we want to be able to use that ability for creativity and bring it into situations. And to me, it's like it's a precious resource. I think oftentimes, um, uh, phew, I mean, I can remember as a kid growing up in grade school that only the pretty pictures got put on the wall. And at Christmas time we I could do a whole entire podcast series on some grade school teachers. But if she didn't like, we would do tin soldiers out of paper towel things, and we would do Christmas trees. And she literally would, if she didn't like it, she would toss it in the trash when the kid would bring it up. And I remember one time she just said, "Oh, you don't know how to do this," and she just crushed the kid's little Christmas tree. And a lot of people, get enjoyment out of crushing your creativity. And I think that that's just important to remember is that, you know, maybe you've been in a survival strategy to protect your creativity, but there's still that muse voice that's alive in you. And again, what Patricia is saying, when you're in a situation where you're with somebody who can allow you to experience that creativity, what a wonderful thing that is. I mean, again, your dancing students are people who are there because they'd like to learn, right? And you know that in order for them to learn, they're going to have to open themselves up, right? They've given themselves the permission slip of showing up in the class. So, you know, that's how creativity grows, is what I'm saying, right? It needs to be watered and nurtured and cared for, and you can do that on your own, and you can do that in creative environments. Correct?
Well, and to your point too, with this, I think of one step at a time. Yeah, because then it's not so overwhelming. So, can you see the outcome? What outcome would you like? Even asking people to talk about, well, what is the outcome that you would like?
Right.
But the empowerment piece is really potent for me in this conversation that we're having. When people can feel empowered that they can actually change being stuck or even create the future. Wow, that's amazing. So it becomes a really important part of their process. I actually ask people to commit to it um, three minutes every day, and it's an eternity at first, but 3 minutes, yeah, yeah. And then of course that helps me do it, right?
What am I committing to in 3 minutes? Am I committing to thinking about it? What am I committing to?
Committing to seeing the outcome that you desire, or whatever that first step is. It might be, we've talked about being centered in here. I think we talked about that a couple weeks ago, where a person is focused on being internal inside their body space. And so that can be the first step to this, to empowerment. Actually, that sounds like a great first step to me, if with someone who is, has so much experience in the world that they always have to project and think outside of themselves, like what's happening over there and what's happening over there. Or I can't do that. I need a shiny red car, but I can't just imagine that and make that happen. And oh yeah, you can, but it's too big for them to think about. So being centered and breathing is just always a good foundational start. It's empowerment. When people can succeed at that, it's amazing how they feel when they can actually succeed at that. I love it.
So the 3 minutes is actually sort of a freedom moment, right? where you just
Yes,
allow. Fair enough?
fair enough.
And you sometimes have to listen to those voices that are contrary in your head as well?
Yeah, right. I mean, you did bring that up. And so separating from that and knowing, I think something that helps, I'm going to interrupt myself here to give another example. I tell people that if I can do it, they can do it. That's empowerment. Because they think I can do anything, right? I'm just always good at this stuff. I can explain it, I can take them through it, etc. Not true. I'm a human. So I had to find value in it. I had to give it credibility, an idea that was so foreign to me. And then I had to be willing and stretch enough to trust the person who was telling me about this. And then, of course, I needed to go see if there was any science connected to it because I love that. And then just actually starting it, right, starting taking one step at a time. So yeah, the negativity can show up. People are not, we should be trained at this when we're 5 years old, right,
Absolutely.
Ray?
Yes, absolutely. I also love what you just demonstrated with a tiny small step. Take 3 minutes every day or for several consecutive days to bring time in your life to do something new, to explore, to experiment, to try it out.
Yeah. Yeah, and to trust too. I mean, it helps. I think it helps to have, like, you are a mentor person, you are a person of authority, Ray. Jamie, you are too. Both of you have outstanding experience leading group processes. I think that's so important for people. But instead of giving you attributes that are um, grandiose, instead of that, to understand that you are a person who had to start somewhere and that you had to continue practicing being a human being who could be creative
Right.
and yeah, and come out of stuckness, since
Yeah.
we're using the word today.
Well, and I want to go back to the dance class metaphor,
Okay.
because sometimes you need to repeat those steps. As you're doing the creativity, as you've had that aha moment, it's okay to go back and repeat it again. It's okay to go ahead and repeat it again. Now, again, the dance requires a skill, a skill and proficiency level in it, in order for it to, to be expressive. But like I said, if you can allow yourself to put, to use again that word you use, trust, put your creativity in a place where it's trusted and safe, right? And then allow yourself to repeat it. And it can be the simple invitation of a 3 minute time a day to imagine that outcome. And it can extend, just like you were talking about earlier, Patricia, with clicking on, like on our computer, we can expand that creativity, because the wonderful thing about creativity is that there is that elasticity to it, that it is designed to grow with us as we go. And I think that that's the other thing that people forget, is there's skill, and then there's creative. And Jackson Pollock, who was the famous splatter painter, that happened to be his process. Now, that was born out of a practice, and then wait, there's a freedom, there's a creativity. It just begins to expand, and it goes in a direction that again feels right for you. And so it begins with that. I love that 3 minute idea. So if uh and so have you been surprised sometimes with students who that you've worked with in a dance class, who like were fighting themselves at the very beginning, who weren't getting it, that all of a sudden there was something that switched inside their head and they got it and they became much more creative and free flowing?
Actually, I was just thinking about someone 2 weeks ago. She had a terrible time lifting her feet up. Well, of course, in dance, you do need to lift your feet up. And then your foot needs to come down. One foot or the other has to come down on the downbeat. That's what rhythm is. That's what dance is to the music. And this was terribly difficult for her. And so I asked her if she could do this with me. I stood beside her. I held her arm in her hand, And I said, can we take these steps together? Will you do it with me, please? And she said, okay. And her partner was right there also holding on to her other arm. And it was so surprising to me. I'd actually never run into anyone who came to a dance class but was afraid to actually step. And so we did it. And it was, again, it was really challenging for her, even in that position, to lift her foot up and bring it back down on the beat. And so I said, when I lift my foot up, I want you to lift your foot up. Would you do that with me? She said, yeah, like that, you know. And then we did it. And then I said, now you can do that with your other foot. Let's do it together. So we're going to do it with your right foot and then your left foot. And I had her arm, which is a good teaching maneuver, because then there's this connection and strength that the teacher has that can help a student. And it also helped her feel like she wasn't going to fall down. And so we did that. We stepped up with the music and down on the downbeat. So it was step, 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 step. And she was so happy. She was so happy. And so I made her promise me that she would practice that. And I said, just 3 minutes in the kitchen or wherever you want to go, but it's got a good floor. Would you please just practice that if you can make some time? And last week when she came back, she was actually doing the whole thing, the whole dance step. I mean, in 1 week, isn't that amazing?
Well, and
I,
again, yeah, you
it's to your point, yeah.
yeah, you created all of that. Story was the microcosm, right? You know, there was the desire on the part of the student to want to. There was an open sharing that she had a problem with it. There wasn't any additional shame put on her of like, well, God, you know, this is that I've never seen anything like this in my life, you know. But you created an atmosphere of safety for her, and you built the trust not only through your words but through your actions, where she was braced with your body, right? So
Yes.
that you literally were moving her body through the space. It's and again, I'll use the artist equivalence. It's sometimes letting people feel an artist flow going along, or if you're singing in a chorus before you sing by yourself, you know, there is that atmosphere of trust. And I'm coming back to this because Ray's heard me say this before sometimes. One of the things that's so precious about creativity is for you to recognize that you want to be able to create a space for yourself to share your creativity, right? But oftentimes, especially people of our age, have been sharing their ideas like balloons, right? Like, I have this great idea, I want to float out there, and in truth, sometimes you are sharing your ideas in a room full of people who have big hat pins in their hands,
Yes.
who are actually just going to do everything they possibly can to explode your ideas. And that's because we have been conditioned to look for the one solution, right? To not entertain ideas, to not get into musing. You know, I need the one thing that works. And so a lot of people by design, if you're going to share their musings, if you're going to share your musings with other people, just recognize a lot of people have their hat pins out ready to pop a hole in your idea. Fair, Ray?
Oh, definitely. And I think that you bring up the point is when is it appropriate? When do you feel safe in those environments? And I think I want to add too to what Patricia just shared and what you shared, Jamie, is Patricia, you allowed your student, the person in the room, to build confidence, their confidence with your guidance. And there's no greater gift, in my opinion, because you basically you helped her overcome, I can't do this, well, let's try it. Um, I'll use another creativity example that at first I thought, why did he say that? Is George Lucas is famous for the big movies, Star Wars, and all the creative. He created a company that actually designed the effects, and it evolved over time. And talk about stuckness again. So the creative team, the best people in the world, came to him when they were working on a movie and say, "We're stuck. You can't do this. The technology doesn't exist." And he shifted the conversation just so slightly and walked away. And I went, whoa, the boss walked away. He basically said, just try it and come back and tell me what happened. That's all he said. So they went back and said, so what was different here? He didn't say, no, you're a bunch of idiots. he said, he said, oh, okay, I guess if it's impossible, it's impossible. He said, and you'll love the response. He said, you know what? We went off saying, well, that's easy for him to say, figure it out. And they tried a bunch of things. And then the next meeting, they came back and he said, you know what? We found something that did work. And he says, and we weren't expecting it. And I think that's the unstuckness and ties into your dance example and the things that we've been exploring. It's the small little things and overcoming the no's in the world, or the naysayers and the people with the big hat pins.
Hat pins.
Well,
Yeah, I love that metaphor of the hat pins. And Ray, with what you're saying, I'm thinking also about this concept of experimentation, and that's what you were talking about too. Just experiment with it instead of saying no. Run experiments, and people oftentimes say, "Well, is that okay? Can I do that?" We're not talking about light bulbs. We're talking about their life, right? Or their relationship, or their jobs, or what they're going to buy or sell, etc. So I say, well, what would be a safe experiment? How about if we start with that? Just an experiment. That really makes a big difference, because then the heat is off. They don't have to
Yeah.
succeed. They can just try.
right.
Yeah.
And
So I love that.
in a results oriented problem solving world that we live in, to be able to find yourself in a place where you can really experiment and explore is very precious. And I think that if we can recognize the preciousness of it, and what you've talked about, Patricia, so much is about cultivating it, right? And you've given us
Right.
these wonderful examples in our time together here today. And that 3 minute exercise, of just allowing yourself to whatever that idea is to sit with the outcome that you imagine, and allow that creative energy to flow in that direction as unfiltered as you possibly can. And as Ray was saying, let's just see what happens. It's not that we're expecting it to resolve in 3 minutes, but we're expecting it to begin to take shape, to begin to take form, to emerge, to see what happens, right? And yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but there was something that you wanted to add.
No, it's um, just listening. I was just saying, right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So as we come to the end of our time together, I want to make sure that we extend this invitation again for you, if you are watching this, and if there is a way in which you can incorporate 3 minutes of creativity or 3 minutes of imagining what's possible, begin to connect with other people who share those ideas, where it's safe, where you can continue to explore and grow. I'm so appreciative of your expertise in this, Dr. Serene. So,
Well, thank
and
you.
Ray, as always, the insights and perspectives. When we're one of the things that we want to do in Open Circle Live is to create an opportunity for you to ask your questions, because that is how we experiment. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. So this is a creative field that you can join us every Wednesday at noon here at Open Circle Live. I want to thank both of you for being with us today. Was there anything that you wanted to make sure we left people with as a reminder for their creative journey in the week ahead?
Actually, I also think about people who are visionary people. Some people they just are. And And I think that it's important for those people to make sure that they have avenues to be around people who don't have hat pins. Yeah, where there's where there's that platform to talk about that tip. Because also another piece of that, in my experience, is that visionaries oftentimes don't really want to talk about what the details might be, because they're idea people. They're comfortable in the abstract, and they're just idea people. And so I still think it's very important. I think that's great. I think we need those people. very much so. We also need the people who can execute those ideas, or engineers, etc., IT people, on and on and on. And so I think it's important when someone knows that they're a visionary, that they take care of that, right? That they take care of that, and surround themselves, or at least have, not everyone, but have opportunities to share those ideas. What do you think?
Amen.
Oh,
Ray.
I was just going to say, I'll just add to that is that by those diverse perspectives of the thinkers and the doers exchanging and combining stuff, um, you can't help but come out with a better understanding of whatever you're working on, or a different perspective. And I've seen it so many times where somebody says, well, I don't like talking to the people in finance because, they just do this. And then during a conversation, this says, I better go talk to him. He brought up a really good point. And you go like, see, if you weren't there in that space, having that exchange, you wouldn't have opened up your thinking or your perspective. So I totally appreciate what Patricia has just shared, and perhaps maybe Jamie again is have people spend their 3 minutes of creativity in the space here.
Mm-hmm. And
There you go.
we're extending that invitation for you to do, and like I said, it's you get to see what's possible, right? When you allow yourself, you give yourself that permission slip to follow your creativity. So thank you for spending time with us on this particular gathering. We'll be here next week, and until then, use your 3 minutes well, and come back and share with whatever creative ideas have emerged since then. We'll see you next week. Thank
Thank you.